Dennis was hired on, I believe, in 2006. And that's when I first met him at his job interview, him and all the other candidates. So we went around the table, we all asked him questions. My question to him was, what happens if there are artistic differences between the director and the accompanist? Because that was the part I was most worried about, not the inner workings of the politics or anything else that go on inside the choir. And his answer was something like, we'll worry about it when it happens. And I didn't follow up. But then for the next, 18 plus years, I don't think we ever had a difference of opinion to even talk about. In fact, he's gone to bat for me several times. We've had a few strong opinions in the choir. Who maybe didn't like my playing so much, and Dennis has always stood up for me. I think Dennis knew he could trust me to follow him fairly closely. And I got used to his idiosyncrasies so that I could be prepared when he wanted us to sing the dot. I knew to try and mimic it on the piano, so he didn't have to work maybe quite as hard to do it. Every time there's new singers, he's got to reiterate it. But I always tried to reinforce his way of working rather than trying to impose my own. But another one that stood out is do you remember the Lost concert? Where he actually commissioned a piece from, I think, Jared Oaks, specifically for the choir. And it was ferocious on the piano. I sweated that one out pretty good, but again, nothing but compliments from Dennis.
Okay, I've been in the choir since 1987, and I am now the longest serving choir member and also the oldest member of the choir. I'm not sure I met Dennis before he started, but I do remember in October 2006 when the choir council interviewed him. There were 12 members of the choir council there, and it was more like an interrogation instead of an interview. It actually was quite funny to think of how they kept interrogating him instead of interviewing him without legitimate questions. Why not? It was funny. But he was very good-natured, and it was hands down when he got before the choir and met with all the choir members in the choir and conducted, and everybody loved him. And choir members, the choir has gone up and down, up and down, up and down. And I was hoping, and maybe this year will be the year we can have 100 members to celebrate his 20 years. That would be really 100 members to celebrate his 20 years. That would really be something for him, because he's always wished to have 100 members. We've gotten close, but never hit the mark. There was a time when the choir could have folded, and I don't mean under Dennis. I'm saying prior to Dennis's tenure. And that his tenacity and his abilities have made it so that people stay. Everybody has different ideas of how the choir should run, but it really starts at the top, and you have to have a good council who directs the choir, and then a good director who can pick music that people like to sing, programs that people will come to want and hear and see, and that kind of thing. And that's Dennis. He's very good at that. He's really good at putting together a concert. My favorite concert with Dennis was this past Christmas 2025. To me, it was magical. And other people have said to me the same thing, that they just thought there was something different about it. So it was either the music he chose, the choir rehearsals went better, or we had better singers, not sure, but it really falls on Dennis's shoulders that the choir sounds good. He's the reason he's there. He's to make us sound good.
When Dennis became the artistic director, the choir's always been pretty tight-knit anyway, even before, but it became even more so like a family than it had been previously to me. And I view the choir members as my cousins. Like, I got 100 cousins now, and it's when he's created an atmosphere within the choir that when times get hard in my life, that's where I turn to for support. is the choir members and Dennis. It's the whole camaraderie, the whole family feeling, the whole there's a place for you. I think the concerts that have stood out most to me have been like the Broadway concerts, because I really enjoy Broadway a lot. And luckily, so does Dennis. One of the hardest ones we ever did, though, was the ABBA concert. My gosh, that was hard. But it was also thrilling. And we've never received that kind of acclamation from the audience before that we had that night. And I will always remember that. About 7 years ago, can't remember, we were doing our spring concert in Highland High School. And the day of the tech rehearsal, we're all in there getting everything done and everything. It went fine. And then Dennis was walking, and Dennis had spent 5 minutes warning everybody in the choir about the danger of falling off the stage. And then when rehearsal was over, he was coming down off the stage and he tripped and fell and broke his wrist. Uh-oh. And this is the night before the concert. And so the next night he is in a cast and he can't turn the music on his music stand and everything. And it turned out that I caught laryngitis that very same day. So I couldn't sing. So I had to sit there and turn pages for him for the whole concert, which was nerve-wracking on my part because it was like, you gotta turn it where he needs it. But it was so funny that he had spent so much time warning everybody, and then that happened to him.
So I remember the very first time I met Dennis, and that was at the choir council as we were trying to hire a new artistic director, because at that point the choir had really dwindled. We were under 30 probably singing members at that point, and it was really a time when the choir needed to build or just kind of fade into oblivion, in my opinion. And he walked in the door. He was one of, I don't know, maybe 3 total candidates for the job. The very underpaid job. And Dennis, brand new to me, I think brand new to everybody in the room. And he just looked like your favorite great uncle. Even though he's only 4 years older than I am, he is a great uncle. So we were kind of taken by his enthusiasm, his jovialness, his thoughts on where, on his ideas on how he could, even with a small choir, make us sound bigger just by placement of where we were singing, which at this point I don't think is as necessary as it was back then. And I mean, we just kind of looked at each other after he was gone and we just kind of nodded. That's the one. There was a concert that I sang a solo in, and I lost my voice on the last day of the Christmas concert. And I tried all day to see what I could do to regain at least the high end of my voice, because it was kind of a high-pitched solo. And I, at the last second, as I was walking up, I said, I'm going to take it down an octave. And it sounded like a frog singing. And I looked over, and Dennis happened to not be conducting this particular piece. And I looked over at him, and he is laying on the bench, red-faced, and basically pounding on the bench. Because it was really, really quite ridiculous is what it was. And then Scotty, when he says, and thank you to Michael for the so low. That was a cute little, that's one of my favorite moments. He was seriously laying on the bench. The thing that I think Dennis has really brought into the choir is that he's made it a fun place, and he's made it that you feel like you were learning and excelling at your singing. And And I think that by doing that, there's more of an enthusiasm from the singers, when then the singers want to go out to their friends and say, hey, you need to see this concert, more than we had in the past.
I started with the choir in 2021, right after we came out of the pandemic. So at the time I joined, we had a president that was moving to New York. And at that point, Courtney Moser took over for the choir as president for a year. He was only going to do it for a year. So he said that originally. And I had experience when I was in Las Vegas as president of the men's choir down there. And I said, well, I can probably do it here as well. And nobody else wanted to step up and do it. So I put my hat in the ring, and I've been president now by going on 6 years. Going on 4 years. Me and Dennis have worked well together. We butted heads occasionally, but for the most part, we've worked well together. He's pretty open to things I've asked, things I've suggested, and so we worked well together. Well, Dennis has been director of the choir for 20 years, so that's half of our existence. So he's had a huge impact on the choir just by the amount of time he's been here. The choir has been through ups and downs since he's been here. But overall, he's been able to hold the choir together, and the choir has continued to grow. When I started 5 years ago, we were at close to 40 people coming back from the pandemic. And now we're at over 100 for this concert. So he's been able to help grow the choir, and the product that he's putting out there has helped grow the choir as well.
Dennis came on, was voted in by the choir council, and the whole choir, I think we all voted on it. I don't think I was on the council at that time. That brought Dennis in, and the joy he brought immediately back to singing, instead of a hard, disciplined attitude that Lane had. And Lane wanted a polished sound. I don't hold that against him, but it was more of a discipline. We need to do this, rather than we go into concerts with Dennis through the 20 years he's been with us. We go into concerts and he says, guys, we know the music. We've sung it over and over again. Just go out there and have fun and show the audience a good time. And I think that's a big difference in artistic directorship. I've sang in choir since high school, had some wonderful high school and college directors, and Dennis is just the most easygoing, and maybe some would not like that, but you know what? There's a joy in the choir that we haven't had when there's that strict discipline. So throughout the years, it's been really fun to work with him, and he knows, as probably everyone does in my life, that I don't shy away from the limelight, and I love solos, I love duets, and I love ensembles. And through the 20 years, Dennis has provided that to me and many others, through Guys Like Us, the little ensemble we had for a while. We met at Dennis's house for rehearsals on Tuesday nights, and then had choir on Thursday nights. So it was a commitment, but it was so much fun. And he was such a good host in his home, and we just sing and laugh and sing and laugh. And again, it comes back to the joy that Dennis brings to the choir. The ABBA concert was just so much fun at Masonic Temple. The ABBA concert at the Masonic Temple, where we had a packed house, was just pure joy, and the people dancing, and that was quite spectacular.
So I joined the choir in 2008 in the early spring. I joined in February. I actually met Dennis and several of the members at Club Triangles one evening. I stopped in and was waiting for my friends, and this group of guys was just laughing out on the patio and having so much fun. And we started talking, and they asked me if I had ever heard of the men's choir, the Salt Lake Men's Choir, and I was aware of them. I'd been down in Salt Lake for about 3 years, so I started chatting with them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. I've been trying to get into that forever. And Dennis just smiled and pulled his wallet out and gave me his card. And it said, artistic director of the Salt Lake Men's Choir. And he's like, come next Thursday. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll totally do that. Most people think of me as like an extroverted person, but like, that was a huge deal for me to go to this place that I didn't know anybody. And I got to choir the next Thursday at the church, and Dennis came up and gave me a big hug and welcomed me. And he's like, I didn't really think you were going to come. And I'm like, I didn't think I was going to come either. And I sat down in the second tenor section with my section leader, and we started talking, and I started singing with the choir. And I've been with them mostly on and off, mostly on over the last that many years. Yeah, like I started in 2008. I was in a little side project that the choir did called Guys Like Us, which was another undertaking of Dennis's that required more of his time every week to do an additional rehearsal. And it was a little audition group that you had to get into. I think it was like a triple quartet or something. And we would meet at his house, and we'd go through a rehearsal, and we'd be there about an hour and go through some songs. And then every concert we do 2 or 3 numbers, and it was just nice to have a little something extra to do, a little bit more of a challenge. And Dennis was amazing with the direction of that, and kind of picking really great songs for like a solid men's choir sound. And it was just fun. And I don't know, it's one thing to call it a choir, but it really is more like a family. And like Dennis has been the leader of that family for the whole time I've been there. I can't imagine what it would be like without him. Like he's my choir director, but he became my friend. I've been to his house for Thanksgiving. Like he's just the most open, loving individual, and just the concern he shows for the choir members. It's an amazing feeling to be in that sanctuary at First Baptist there with under Dennis's direction. And even when we didn't have the orchestra, Christmas has always been my favorite, but that was like one of the best ideas Dennis has ever had, or to challenge the choir, because it's expensive. It's expensive to have the orchestra there. And Dennis made it a priority, and he got everybody on board with it. And we found ways the first few years when we didn't have the money to pay for it to fundraise for it. And it just takes the choir to a totally different level.
So Dennis came in, and he actually brought the choir artistically more professional. We've had some really fun concerts with him. I think our most enjoyable concert and our most exciting concert was our ABBA concert. We held that at the Masonic Temple, and it was a sellout 2 nights in a row. We had people dancing on the floor, and it was a blast. He brought in new music that we haven't had before, spoofs on songs that we've sang. So it's been 20 years. We've had so many different types of music and concerts that it's been so much fun. Dennis's impact on the choir is immeasurable, actually. In the 20 years, the choir has grown from 20 members when he started all the way to the 100 members that we have today. And we've gone on cruises together. We've had Easter dinners. We've had Christmases together. One Christmas, we were celebrating at his house. And the next day, I get this phone call from Adrian saying, Dennis's house is on fire. And that's a true story. His house caught on fire. One of his light fixtures kind of shorted out and started his house on fire. And as he was calling the fire department, the news showed up at his house, and here he is outside in his bathrobe, and Channel 4, I believe it was, came out and started interviewing him about his house fire. But we went over there, took care of his house, cleaned him up, and he had to throw out all his Christmas decorations because of the smoke damage for his house.
When I first took over the choir, I had to
the first job we had was to get a new choir director. So we had advertised, and the choir council and myself picked Dennis as our choir director. Now there was a lot of, we had a couple of applicants who were all very well qualified. And for me, one of the lead, it's going to sound really silly, back in the days, people had phone books and stuff. One of the main reasons, other than his qualifications and his education, which were stellar, his name was in the phone book with an address. Now, I know that sounds silly, but we'd had some history of some problems, and so I knew he was stable. Yeah, and and that was very important at that time. So after some issues we'd had, so the choir council and myself, we hired Dennis based on his qualifications and the fact that he was in the phone book. Sorry. The one thing about Dennis was his enthusiasm, and he was always prepared. So when over the years we had directors, sometimes you'd show up for the first rehearsal and they hadn't even selected the music they wanted to do for the show. We never had that with Dennis. Dennis planned well ahead, and he was so good that he would even plan for next season, so that if you were, in my case, I was writing grants at the time, which was very important to know because you have to write grants for the future. And if you have a director that knows what you're going to do in the future, it makes it much easier rather than just having to make stuff up. So I always appreciate that about Dennis. And the other thing that kind of was interesting with Dennis and myself, he wanted to move the choir. We were at All Saints Episcopal Church for years. He wanted to move it to the Baptist church. And I kind of was hesitant about that because I didn't want to lose our space there, because Casey didn't work out with him. And I thought, well, maybe he won't be director that long, then we'll be kicked out of the Baptist church. But he did win ultimately. If we didn't, it wasn't an argument, trust me. Dennis and I always got along very well. He moved the choir to the Baptist church, and I really must say that was probably one of the most important things he did for the choir. He gave the choir a home and a base that I think they'll have forever, even if after he's gone, the choir is still welcomed and going to still have a home there. And for rehearsal space, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit in the chapel, I think, but he has all the extra rehearsal rooms, and really for sectionals, it really worked out to be much better. And performance-wise for Christmas, you can't beat it. So that was a big, huge contribution Dennis has made. And it gave many of the choir members a sense of community, not just being in the choir, but also being a part of that church, because that church is very welcoming to our people, and it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Dennis just has a good way with directing the choir. He's very personable, and he's friends with most of the members. I mean, so one of his big, when we first hired him, the choir had very small numbers. And one of the things he had promised was that he would build the ranks of the choir. And he did that. He went out personally and met people, went places where other gay guys go, and he recruited and was singing in the choir. And he really is personally responsible for building the choir to its ranks now. I really believe that. And I think it's his personality and his friendliness and his eagerness and love. He loves the choir. He loves the guys in it. And, he's just a good leader. I think he's a fabulous leader and a good director. He has like any director, he has his things. I don't like this song. Or, who cares? One of the things we did as a president is we made sure you had a contract, and that contract gave him all the power he needed to be the director he wanted to be. And that's the way it is. And that's the way it should be.
Thank you for all the years that you put in with the choir and moving the choir forward for 20 years. And I always enjoyed it when you did the choir within the choir, the guys like us. That was very, very fun. And I enjoyed the trips to St. George. And do you remember the time when we were performing and we heard the coyote howling?
Dennis, it has been great working with you all those years. I felt that we were a real team, and whatever we collaborated with, we've done everything classical to modern to Broadway, and you've never questioned me, you've never doubted me. And I always knew I could confidently follow you, no matter which territory you took us into. I'm pleased that I was able to work with you all those years. I would have liked to have been all the way to the end with you. Of course, things intervened, but I'm just so pleased that you asked me back to collaborate with you one last time on this final concert of yours. So congratulations, and the best to you on whatever road life takes you on.
Dennis, we're going to miss you being our director. I know you're going to be director emeritus, or if the emeritus is not the right word, I'm not sure. But we're going to miss your direction, but we know you're going to still be there. And I love you as a friend. You've been a friend for 20 years, and we're going to continue another 20 if I live long enough.
Dennis, I'm so glad that you came into my life, into all of our lives. It has made life so much more worth living to have you in our lives. And I thank God every day for that.
Dennis, it has been an absolute privilege to be a student of yours for these last 20 years, and not only to be your student, but to be your friend. And the choir absolutely won't be the same without you. You brought such a distinctive mark that I have been so happy to be there and witness. I'm so happy that you are finally getting to retire, and nobody deserves it more. You have put in so much work over the last 20 years with this choir, and I hope you are as proud of what you've accomplished as the rest of us are, because you've done an amazing job with this choir. I love you.
But what a joy to sing with you all these years. You're just a glorious person, inside and out. You love to sing, you love music, it shows, and love being part of it. Thank you.
Dennis, I really want to appreciate your 20 years of friendship, your 20 years of being a mentor, of being a music mentor as well, and just being a friend. I am glad where both of our lives have gone, and I'm glad where this choir has come because of you. And I hope you feel a tremendous amount of pride in building the choir and building the people in it.
Dennis, I want to thank you for the 20 years that you've given to the choir. You've done a lot for the choir. You've helped us grow. You've helped us become a better choir. We really appreciate all that you've done for us, and I personally appreciate the friendship that you've given to me, and helping me in my leadership as president. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Dennis, thank you so much for taking the choir to the heights that it is today. 20 years is a legacy. Not many people can say that they were able to continue for 20 years in any position. Good luck in your future, and we hope to see you around at concerts and even doing some musical numbers with us, if all possible.
Dennis, you know I love you, and I am so proud of you, and I'm so happy that I hired you. I take the credit for that, and you've done 20 years of fabulous service, and I wish you could do 20 more. But life goes on, and so will you.
Congratulations on 20 years, Dennis. You will be missed. Love you. Love you too.